Good evening, friend. Tonight I invite you to settle in, get cozy, and let your worries melt away. Take a deep breath, close your eyes if you like, and allow the timeless stories of the red heart of Australia to carry you far from the noise of the everyday world. We are journeying to Uluru, the mighty sandstone monolith that rises from the ochre desert plains like a sentinel from a forgotten age. Beneath its vast, silent presence lie ancient secrets, sacred laws, and powerful spirits etched into every crevice. These stories are not mere myths. They are living echoes of the dreaming, passed down for tens of thousands of years by the first peoples of this land. As you drift deeper into this tale, let the rhythm of the past guide your thoughts. You are safe here. You are welcome here. Before we begin, if you find peace in stories like this, tales that honor truth, culture, and the deep mystery of place, please consider tapping like and subscribing to the channel. It helps us share these voices with more kind ears, just like yours. Now, let's begin. Uluru is waiting.
Uluru Awakens, in the heart of Australia's red centre, where the desert breathes with ancient winds and the land rolls out like a sea of ochre and gold, stands a monolith so vast, so resolute, it appears as though it has always been there. Uluru, once known by outsiders as Ayers Rock, is more than just a geological marvel. It is the heartbeat of a culture, a silent witness to time that stretches beyond the reckoning of centuries. To understand Uluru, we must go back not merely thousands of years, but hundreds of millions. Over 500 million years ago, in a time when what is now Australia lay beneath an inland sea, layers of sandstone and conglomerate began to compress and rise. The region that cradles Uluru was subjected to immense tectonic forces during a mountain-building event known as the Petermann Ranges orogeny. Sediments from long-gone mountains settled and were compacted into arkos, a type of sandstone rich in feldspar, creating the very bones of Uluru. Over eons, the land shifted. Mountains rose and fell. Oceans came and vanished. What remained was the enduring spine of the ancient world, thrust up on its side and sculpted by relentless wind and rain. That red hue we now see, glowing at sunrise and burning at sunset, is the result of oxidation, the slow rusting of iron-rich minerals exposed to the air over countless millennia. But to the Aṉangu people, the traditional custodians of this land, this rock did not merely rise from the earth, it was formed in the dreaming, or Tjukurpa. This is not just a time in the past, but a continuous creation story that flows through the present and into the future. In this view, Uluru was shaped by the actions of ancestral beings whose deeds are inscribed in the stone itself. The grooves, caves, and crests are not just natural features. They are sacred markings left behind during epic journeys and cosmic battles. To the untrained eye, Uluru might seem silent and still. But spend time near its base, and you will notice something extraordinary. The rock is not uniform. It shifts in color and texture depending on the angle of the sun, the touch of rain, the whisper of the wind. In the early morning it may blush a soft violet. By mid-afternoon it blazes a deep, rusted red, and at dusk it settles into a dark maroon, like blood remembering its source. The rock lives and breathes, not literally, but rhythmically, echoing the pulse of the land and the people who belong to it. The earliest human presence around Uluru can be traced back more than 30,000 years. The Aṉangu people have walked this land, hunted its animals, gathered its plants, and told its stories through unbroken lineage. For them, Uluru is not a monument, not a landmark, not a backdrop for a tourist photograph. It is a sacred ancestor, a spiritual entity alive with memory and responsibility. Every cave along its flanks has a name and a purpose. Every waterhole and pathway plays a part in the great tapestry of creation that still unfolds. Uluru's creation stories are specific and tied to the land. They are not for outsiders to reinterpret or embellish. Yet what can be shared is the understanding that these stories bind the people to their environment in a profound way. When the Aṉangu elders speak of the Mala people or the Kuniya python woman, they are not referring to distant myths. They speak of direct ancestral connections. These beings shaped the land, and in doing so, created the law. Tjukurpa is not only a creation story, it is the foundation for how one must live, with respect, humility, and a sense of place. This sacred rock has known the thunder of storms and the silence of droughts. It has stood still while the world around it changed, while the megafauna disappeared, while ancient trade routes stretched across the desert, while the first Europeans arrived and drew their maps and lines in ignorance. Uluru has witnessed these things not as an observer, but as a participant in the ongoing story of the continent. In the 20th century, the world beyond the desert began to take an interest. In the year 1936, the area was declared a national park. Then, in the year 1985, in an act of justice long overdue, the Australian government handed the title deeds of Uluru back to the Aṉangu people. They, in turn, agreed to lease it back to the government for joint management, a delicate balance between preservation and accessibility, between tourism and cultural integrity. Even so, the deeper truths of Uluru are often misunderstood. To some, it remains merely a site of awe, a stop on a road trip. To others, it is a spiritual experience, though they may not understand the protocols of respect that come with it. And to the Aṉangu, it is kin, deserving of reverence, not curiosity. It is not to be climbed, not to be touched lightly, and certainly not to be taken from. Every story linked to Uluru comes with responsibility. This is not mythology as amusement. It is cultural law, deeply embedded in every contour of the stone. Spend a night near Uluru, and you may begin to feel what many describe as an overwhelming stillness, a grounding energy that seems to anchor your thoughts to the earth. The stars above seem sharper here, the silence deeper, the breath of the wind more articulate. There is something here that words cannot quite name, but which the Aṉangu have always understood. In the modern day, Uluru remains a powerful symbol, not just of Australia's natural beauty, but of its cultural reckoning. The return of the land to its rightful custodians was a step, but it is only the beginning. To walk near Uluru is to enter a story already in motion, a story of creation and continuity, of reverence and renewal. So, as we begin this journey into the myths and sacred truths that lie beneath the red surface, remember that these stories are not mere fiction. They are the memories of a living landscape. Uluru does not belong to history. It belongs to now, and to all who approach with respect. The rock awakens each dawn, as it always has. Let us now listen to what it remembers.
Tjukurpa, the law of the ancestors. Before there was time, before there were stars, rivers, or human footprints in the red dust, there was Tjukurpa. For the Aṉangu people, the traditional owners of Uluru and the surrounding lands, Tjukurpa is not just a set of legends or spiritual tales. It is law, it is story, it is country. It explains how everything came to be, how one must behave, and how the world continues to function in balance. To understand Uluru without understanding Tjukurpa is like trying to read a song without hearing its melody. Tjukurpa is not linear, not a tale with a beginning, middle, and end. It is ever present. It flows through the land like wind through spinifex, invisible but vital. It is the spiritual backbone of existence, and it weaves together the people, the animals, the plants, the weather, and the very rocks beneath one's feet. In the vast silence of the desert, Tjukurpa speaks through the land itself. Every ridge, gully, and waterhole carries a story, not a metaphorical story, but the real tracks of ancestral beings who shape the land in their travels. These beings, part human, part animal, part elemental, were not gods in the Western sense. They were creators, lawmakers, and wanderers. Their actions gave form and meaning to the world, and their lessons remain embedded in the earth. Among these beings are two of the most well-known, the Mala people and the Kuniya woman. Their stories live in the stone, not as carvings, but as formations etched into Uluru's surface by the events of the dreaming. The stories of Mala and Kuniya are central to understanding both the physical features of the rock and the laws that govern proper living. The Mala people were ancestral beings who came from the northwest, bringing with them the knowledge of ceremony and sacred law. When they arrived at Uluru, they began preparing for a special inma, a sacred ceremonial dance. They raised ceremonial poles, sang the ancient songs, and laid out the ground for initiation rites. These were not just rituals. They were expressions of the Tjukurpa, reenactments that kept the spiritual world in harmony with the physical. But as the Mala prepared for their inma, trouble approached from the west. A neighboring group, the Mulga men, sent an invitation, or some say a demand, for the Mala to join their ceremony instead. The Mala, bound by their own commitments and spiritual law, refused. In doing so, they upheld their Tjukurpa, placing the law above convenience or fear.
This decision angered the other group. In retaliation, they conjured an evil spirit called Kurpani, a monstrous dog-like creature filled with rage and power. Kurpani was sent to destroy the Mala. As it approached Uluru, it killed many of the Mala people, scattering them, interrupting their inma, and leaving a mark on the land that remains visible today. The northern face of Uluru bears the imprint of Kurpani's wrath, a reminder of what happens when law is tested by force. Even in death, the Mala held firm to Tjukurpa. Their ceremony was disrupted, but their resolve became part of the land. Their story is told to warn, to guide, and to teach. Never abandon your responsibilities, no matter the pressure. Law and land are one. From the east, a different figure arrived, the Kuniya woman, a powerful ancestor in the form of a python. She came to Uluru from the lands around Mutitjulu, carrying the knowledge of family, protection, and vengeance. Her story is intimately tied to a waterhole at the base of the rock, a place that remains sacred to this day. Kuniya traveled to Uluru because she sensed danger. Her nephew, also a python man, had been attacked by a Liru warrior, a venomous snake man, and left dying near the waterhole. When she arrived and saw the wounds inflicted upon her kin, she was overcome with rage and sorrow. In the heat of the dreaming, emotions are not symbolic. They shape the very ground. With her digging stick, Kuniya struck down the Liru warrior. The blow of her vengeance is said to have marked the surface of Uluru, forming a deep scar still visible on the southern side. But more than that, her act was an expression of justice under Tjukurpa. She did not strike out of blind anger. She fulfilled her role as protector, acting within the framework of ancestral law. Her power was righteous, her grief real, and her lesson eternal. The Kuniya and Liru story, like the tale of the Mala, teaches more than just myth. It imparts values, loyalty, justice, and the sacred obligation to care for kin and country. It also demonstrates the dual nature of power, its potential to destroy and to heal, depending on how it is wielded. To outsiders, these stories may appear allegorical, but for the Aṉangu, they are not metaphors, they are histories. They are truths that continue to guide behavior, decision-making, and spiritual understanding. Tjukurpa is not remembered, it is lived. Children learn it through story and song, through art and ceremony, through walking the land and hearing its voices. Elders pass it on not through lectures, but through presence, by being living embodiments of the law. At Uluru, you cannot separate the rock from Tjukurpa. The sandstone is not just a relic, it is testimony. The grooves are not erosion, they are ancestral footprints. The caves are not shelters, they are sacred chambers where law was born. When a visitor sees Uluru and admires its beauty, they are seeing only a fraction of what the Aṉangu perceive. The true essence is invisible, layered, encoded in dreaming. For the Aṉangu, everything is connected: the story, the place, the law, the self. Tjukurpa is the thread that ties it all together, and that thread stretches out in every direction, across the desert, linking sites and song lines, connecting generations past and future. Modern Australia is only just beginning to grasp the depth of this knowledge system. Scientists now speak of ecological custodianship and cultural fire management, echoing principles that Aboriginal people have followed for tens of thousands of years. But Tjukurpa is not something that can be easily translated or absorbed. It must be respected on its own terms, recognized not as superstition, but as law, equal in complexity and value to any legal code devised in Parliament. Uluru is not just a rock, it is a law book written in stone and spirit. Each ridge and curve is a paragraph, each tale a chapter in the living constitution of the desert. When the sun hits its face just right, it does more than glow, it speaks. And if you listen closely, you might hear the echo of ancestors walking, singing, and dancing, as they did when the world was new. Now that we understand the law beneath the rock, let us journey next into one of its most powerful stories, the clash between the python woman and the venomous warrior, where rage and righteousness met in a blaze of spirit and stone.
The Battle of Kuniya and Liru. The sun had just begun to kiss the horizon when the wind over Uluru changed. It was a subtle shift, a quiet sigh through the desert shrubs, the faintest rustle over the skin of the rock. But to those who know this place, to those who walk with the knowledge of their ancestors, it was more than a breeze. It was the breath of a memory stirring, the ancient memory of a battle, written into the surface of Uluru by fire, grief, and justice. This is the story of Kuniya, the python woman, and her fateful encounter with Liru, the venomous snake man. It is one of the most potent and enduring narratives of the Aṉangu dreaming, and it is etched directly into the rock's southern face. But more than that, it is a living story, a lesson in loyalty, vengeance, and the sacred power that courses through kinship. Kuniya came from the east. She traveled from the lands near Watarka, journeying across the desert in a sweeping arc that brought her to the great red heart of the continent. Her form was not just that of a woman. She was also a powerful python spirit, graceful and strong, bearer of ancestral wisdom and fierce protector of her bloodline. Kuniya was on a mission. Her nephew, another python being, had traveled to Uluru ahead of her to carry out sacred business. He was fulfilling obligations tied to the Inma, ceremonial responsibilities that ensured the balance of country and the continuation of Tjukurpa. But something had gone terribly wrong. As he carried out his duty, he encountered Liru. Liru, unlike Kuniya, was not a creature of protection or healing. He was a being of venom, a spear-carrying warrior from the west. He was a monitor lizard snake, part man, part serpent, known for his aggression and arrogance. He viewed Kuniya's nephew with suspicion, a rival, an outsider, a threat to his own authority. What exactly provoked Liru's wrath is not remembered in detail, for that part of the story belongs only to those initiated in the deeper teachings of the land. but the consequences of his anger were clear. In a blind act of violence, Liru attacked Kuniya's nephew. Some say he speared him. Others speak of poison and treachery. The result was the same. Kuniya's kin lay bleeding near Mutitjulu waterhole, his life force seeping into the sand. Far away, Kuniya felt the disturbance. In the dreaming, family bonds are not limited by distance. Spirit flows through blood, through memory, through country. She sensed the pain of her nephew as if it were her own, and without hesitation, she turned her path toward Uluru. The journey was swift, though long. Across dunes and dry creek beds, through country alive with silent watchers, thorny devils, wedge-tailed eagles, ancient trees whispering in Mutitjulu, Kuniya came. Her movements carved invisible songlines across the land, each step a heartbeat of purpose. By the time she reached the base of Uluru, she was burning with grief and rage. When she found her nephew, the scene was unbearable. His body was broken, his breath shallow. She held him in her coils, whispered words known only to kin, and placed her forehead to his in farewell. In that moment, her sorrow became something sharper. It became fury. And fury, when carried by an ancestral being, is not something that passes like a storm. It shapes the earth.
Kuniya turned toward the rock and began to climb. Her path is still visible today, a smooth groove on the southern face of Uluru, running upward in a determined line. She carried with her a wana, a digging stick, not as a tool of cultivation, but as a weapon of justice. She had no words left for Liru, only action. She found him watching from a ledge, unrepentant and cold. His form shimmered, half human, half reptile, tall, with scales the color of burned earth and eyes like cracks in stone. He laughed, they say, mocked her grief, underestimated her power. Kuniya struck once, a single, forceful blow between the eyes. The impact was so great it is said to have carved a deep pit into the rock. Liru stumbled, dazed. Blood ran from his wound and formed a line down the cliff face. That streak remains to this day, dark and unmistakable, flowing downward like a scar that will never heal. The second blow was not for punishment, it was for purification. Kuniya knew that violence, even when justified, carried consequence. She struck Liru again, this time with spiritual intent, not to harm further, but to cleanse the damage he had caused. This is the paradox of her story. She was both avenger and healer. Her justice was swift, but it was balanced. It was born of law, not vengeance for vengeance's sake. After the battle, the rock was changed, not metaphorically, physically. The southern side of Uluru bears the markings of this ancestral fight. Caves shaped like coiled snakes, ridges that seem to ripple with serpentine motion, a deep scar where Liru's blood ran. The nearby Mutitjulu waterhole, a place of calm and life, now carries the weight of both ceremony and sorrow. This is not myth in the way Western tales describe myth. This is memory. The Aṉangu people walk past these markings and do not say, "This is where Kuniya might have fought." They say, "This is where she did." The rock does not depict a story. It is the story. It holds the energy of what occurred, and that energy remains. Visitors to this area are reminded to walk softly, to listen with their whole body. This place is not a photo opportunity. It is sacred ground. The story of Kuniya and Liru teaches not only about justice, but about how to carry pain, how to act with purpose, and how to remain true to Tjukurpa, even when all you want is revenge. Children are taught this story not to entertain, but to shape their understanding of right and wrong, to show that strength is not measured by the ability to strike, but by the ability to act in balance with law and spirit. That grief is powerful, and that power, when channeled through law, can change the world. Today, elders still sit near Mutitjulu, watching the light change on the rock surface. They point out Kuniya's path, the pit where Liru fell, the shapes that carry meaning only for those who know how to read them. They do not tell everything. Some knowledge is held in trust, revealed only to those who earn it. But what they do share is given with humility, and with hope that all who come will treat this story not as legend, but as truth. The Python woman's battle is not over. It lives on in each act of protection, in every choice to uphold the law of the ancestors. When the wind moves just right, you may hear her still, not in anger, but in song. Now that we have seen the mark she left on the sacred stone, let us turn to those who came before her, the Mala people, and the legacy of their ceremony interrupted. For their story is not one of conflict, but of resilience in the face of spiritual assault. Let us walk their path next.
The Mala people's journey. When the wind glides across the northern face of Uluru, there is a subtle reverence in its tone, as if it carries the rhythm of old footsteps, soft chanting, and the rustle of ceremonial feathers. This part of the sacred rock holds the memory of the Mala people, a group of ancestral beings whose story is among the most important in Aṉangu tradition. Their journey is not only a tale of creation and law, but a spiritual foundation upon which much of the local Tjukurpa is built. And like all ancestral stories of this land, it is written directly into the stone itself. The Mala came from the northwest, traveling across the desert, carrying with them more than just bodies and belongings. They bore culture, sacred knowledge, the law, and the structure for inma, or ceremony. Their arrival at Uluru was not by chance. This place, with its magnetic presence and towering walls, was chosen for a reason. It was here they intended to conduct a sacred initiation ceremony, one that would ensure the continuation of law and the binding of generations through right and purpose. Upon reaching the rock, the Mala immediately began their preparations. They erected nurtunja poles, ceremonial wooden structures carved with great care and imbued with symbolic strength. These poles were not just physical objects, but spiritual connectors, reaching between the physical world and the spiritual plane of Tjukurpa. They marked the space for the inma and declared the land temporarily sacred, a threshold between ordinary life and ancestral performance. The Mala were methodical and dedicated. They chanted songs passed down from the dreaming, each line invoking the presence of spirit beings and guiding the energy into the land. They danced, moved in unison, and prepared the kulata, spears, to be used symbolically in the ceremony. The rhythms of life and law began to take shape in the dust. Uluru, towering above them, watched in solemn silence. But not all forces at work were aligned in harmony. Far to the west, another group, known in some versions of the story as the Mulga men, sent an invitation to the Mala. They were also planning a ceremony and requested, or in some tellings demanded, that the Mala abandon their preparations at Uluru and instead join the Western celebration. To the outsider, this might seem a small request, but in the realm of Tjukurpa, it was an unacceptable disruption. You see, once preparations for an inma have begun, there is no turning away. The sacred process must be completed as an act of respect to the ancestors and to the law. To leave it unfinished, to abandon one's duty to Tjukurpa, would be a breach not only of tradition, but of cosmic order. The Mala, understanding this, sent their reply. No, they would not be swayed. Their ceremony at Uluru would continue as planned.
This decision, firm and righteous though it was, triggered dire consequences. The Western group, angered by the refusal, chose not to accept the decision with grace. Instead, they summoned a dark spirit, a Kurpani, an evil dog-like creature born from the realms of malevolence and resentment. In some tellings, Kurpani was shaped by song and thought, conjured by words twisted in bitterness. Once called, it could not be undone. Kurpani began its approach from the west, a shadow against the low light of the desert horizon. Its movements were unnatural, swift and slinking, filled with venomous intent. As it crossed the sand plains, even the trees seemed to lean away, and the birds fell silent. Its presence disturbed the land, and its destination was clear: Uluru.
The Mala, unaware of the threat at first, continued their preparations. But as Kurpani drew closer, some sensed a shift, a ripple in the balance. A group of women, gifted with spiritual sensitivity, noticed birds fleeing the area and animals behaving erratically. They raised the alarm. Yet by the time the elders realized what was coming, it was too late to flee or prepare a defense.
Kurpani arrived not as a thunderous force, but as a quiet terror. It slipped into the ceremonial space and began its attack. It tore through the gathering, killing some, scattering others, and most tragically, shattering the sacred rhythm of the Inma. In Aṉangu tradition, when a ceremony is broken in such a way, it does not just disrupt the present. It sends a tremor through time. The consequences are spiritual, emotional, and even geological. The land itself absorbed the story. The northern face of Uluru bears the mark of this attack. Deep fissures, shadowed curves, and features that seem to twist in agony are read by the elders as physical imprints of the Mala's suffering and Kurpani's violence. Some areas of the rock are considered so sacred due to this story that they are not photographed or shown publicly. They are held in reverent secrecy, protected by cultural protocols. Yet this is not just a story of defeat. The Mala's refusal to abandon their ceremony, even under pressure, stands as a powerful example of loyalty to law and country. They chose Tjukurpa over compromise. Their stand, though it resulted in tragedy, is celebrated as a lesson in the strength of spiritual discipline and the dangers of succumbing to outside influence when sacred responsibilities are at hand. The remnants of the Mala's ceremony still exist. Visitors walking near Kanchu Gorge along Uluru's northern base may find themselves overcome by a strange quiet, a stillness that feels deeper than silence. Here, the echoes of the Mala remain. The stone seems to listen more than speak. It holds the memory of chants, of dancing feet, of the moment when ceremony and chaos collided. For the Aṉangu, this story is a guide, a reminder that law and culture must be protected, even in the face of misunderstanding or aggression. That to abandon one's spiritual responsibility, even under pressure, is to unbalance not just the present, but the very foundation of the world. Children learn about the Mala not simply through story, but through action. They are taught to prepare with care, to honor every part of the ritual process, to take their roles seriously. The lesson is clear. Once the law is in motion, you must see it through. In the years following the return of Uluru to its rightful custodians, more attention has been paid to stories like this, not for tourism, but for reconciliation. Understanding the story of the Mala helps outsiders see the depth and richness of Aṉangu law and the high cost of cultural disruption. And so, as the desert wind shifts once more and the shadows lengthen across the northern face of the rock, remember the Mala, not as mythical beings, but as keepers of a sacred rhythm, a rhythm that continues beneath the red stone, beating in time with the heart of the land. Next, we move into the rock itself, to the quiet, mysterious places where ancestral spirits dwell in darkness and echo. Let us listen to the whispers in the caves.
The spirits in the caves. As the sun arcs across the wide desert sky and its light creeps over the vast shoulders of Uluru, the ancient rock reveals more than color and shadow. It unveils memory. Not just the memory of people, but the imprints of beings whose stories pulse through the rock itself. Along Uluru's flanks lie caves, small and often hidden recesses in the sandstone, where the very spirit of Tjukurpa is said to reside. These are not simply natural formations. To the Aṉangu, these are sacred chambers, places where the spiritual and physical worlds breathe together. From the outside, the caves may appear modest, shallow scoops in red stone, fringed by desert grasses and low trees. But cross the threshold, and something changes. The temperature shifts. The air feels heavier, closer. The sounds of the desert fade, replaced by an uncanny hush. You are not alone here. You are never alone here. These spaces are known as Aṉangu, spirit places, where ancestral energies still linger, watching, whispering, remembering. Each cave has its story, each surface its markings. Some hold ancient rock art, ochre figures, hand stencils, tracks of animals drawn with reverence. These artworks are not decoration. They are not even considered art in the Western sense. They are inscriptions, ceremonial acts of recording the dreaming, encoded messages passed down through unbroken lines of ancestors. One such cave, located on the southern side of the rock, is known for its connection to the Kuniya woman, the powerful python ancestor whose story we explored earlier. Inside, there are sinuous lines etched and painted on the walls, representing her form, her journey, and her transformation. This cave is not just a place to remember her, it is her. Her presence inhabits the space like breath fills lungs. When Aṉangu elders enter, they do so with respect, acknowledging her spirit as one would greet a living elder.
Not far from there, in a hollow partially hidden by desert she-oaks, lies a men's teaching cave. Here, young boys were brought by their elders to begin their journey into manhood. The stories told in this place were not shared lightly. They were earned. In the cool darkness, the boys would listen as their fathers and uncles recited the lore of the land, the Tjukurpa, not as folklore, but as instruction for life. How to behave, how to hunt, how to walk through the world without leaving it broken behind you. The cave walls here are marked with concentric circles, animal tracks, and symbols of movement, all tied to stories of survival and identity. The sandstone, fine-grained and soft beneath the touch, served as a canvas for thousands of years. But it was also a vessel. The very act of creating these marks was a ceremony. The knowledge wasn't just shared, it was inscribed, not only on stone, but into the memory of those who witnessed it. On the western side of Uluru lies another cave, this one associated with women's business. The details of its teachings remain private, protected by cultural protocol. What is known, and what can be respectfully shared, is that this cave was a space of strength and support. Women gathered here to prepare food, teach girls the secrets of life, and perform inma connected to fertility, birth, and growth. Some marks on the walls represent digging sticks, seed-grinding stones, and the symbols of womanhood, curved flowing lines that echo the movement of water and life. It is in these caves that the spirit stories live most vividly. For the Aṉangu, the spirits of the ancestors do not reside in the past. They are present, always. A visitor walking through these areas must be mindful of where they step, where they look, and even where they allow their thoughts to wander. Disrespect in sacred space does not go unnoticed, even if no living person is there to witness it. The rock watches, the caves remember. One of the most well-known of these sacred spaces is the Kulpi Nyinkaku, the teaching cave at the base of Uluru's western face. It is here that elders brought children to teach them about the surrounding land. The rock itself became the textbook. Shadows were explained in terms of spirit. Marks were decoded into lessons. A ridge might be the sleeping form of a dreaming being. A crack might be a scar left by a battle or a warning. The land was read like a book, and the cave was its classroom. Western observers who first encountered these caves often failed to understand their significance. Early anthropologists mislabeled the artworks as primitive. Tourists snapped photos of the paintings, unaware that they were capturing sacred knowledge never meant to be shared outside the community. Even now, despite better education and improved cultural awareness, the tension remains. How do you share a sacred site without diminishing its power? How do you protect something so ancient in a world so quick to consume? This is why many of Uluru's caves are no longer accessible to the public. Some have been closed off entirely, others guarded through silence. The Aṉangu do not hoard knowledge, they protect it, because knowledge, in their tradition, is powerful, and power must be handled with care, given at the right time, in the right way, to those ready to carry it with respect. And yet some stories are shared, gifts offered in good faith, so that outsiders may understand not only the beauty of Uluru, but its sacred meaning. One such shared belief is that the rock is alive, not metaphorically, but energetically. It hums with the dreaming. Its caves are like organs pulsing with ancestral memory. Sit in silence within one, and you might feel it, a subtle vibration, not of sound, but of presence, an awareness that this space is not yours, yet you are being permitted to enter, if only for a moment. One of the most humbling aspects of these cave stories is their continuity. When a young Aṉangu girl places her hand on the same wall her grandmother did, she becomes part of an unbroken chain. When a boy hears a story whispered in the dark about a lizard spirit or a waterhole guardian, he becomes both student and protector. These caves are bridges between generations, and each new voice that speaks within them adds to the chorus of the land. So as the light fades and shadows lengthen across the rock, remember this: Uluru is not just something to be seen, it is something to be felt. Its caves are not empty, they are full of stories, of spirits, of lessons echoing through time. Let us now move from the stillness of the caves to the pulse beneath the stone, to the energy that hums through the desert's heart. For Uluru is more than myth. Some say it breathes, some say it moves. Let us listen to the heartbeat of the earth.
The heartbeat of the earth. Long before the first white settlers set foot on this land, long before maps bore names and borders, the Aṉangu people already knew what modern science has only recently begun to explore. That Uluru is not just a rock, but a living force. It breathes in silence, pulses in shadow, and radiates something deep, ancient, and unseen. The people call it sacred, the scientists call it anomalous, but those who walk its base with reverence speak of it the same way. Uluru has a heartbeat. To stand near the monolith is to feel something shift beneath the soles of your feet. Not a tremor, not a rumble, something subtler, a pressure perhaps, or a kind of resonance that runs through the soil. Some have described it as standing near a quiet engine. Others, as if the rock is listening, absorbing every movement, every breath. It is this uncanny awareness, this low thrum beneath the silence, that has sparked both spiritual and scientific curiosity. The land around Uluru is part of a vast geological formation stretching hundreds of kilometers across central Australia. Beneath its surface lies a complex web of mineral deposits, magnetic fields, and fault lines. Studies have found that the area around Uluru emits low-frequency electromagnetic energy. While much of this can be explained by the concentration of iron-rich sandstone and magnetic minerals within the rock, the patterns do not behave exactly as expected. In certain places, compasses falter, radio frequencies change. Sensitive equipment picks up gentle rhythmic vibrations too faint to be registered as earthquakes, yet too consistent to be dismissed. These scientific anomalies have drawn geophysicists and researchers from around the world. Yet for the Aṉangu, none of this is news. Their understanding does not rely on instruments, but on lived experience. For them, the energy of Uluru is not a question of data, it is a known truth. Passed down through generations, the knowledge of the rock's living nature is part of Tjukurpa, inseparable from the stories of creation and law. Elders speak of the rock as Nganampachuta, all of us together. They say that Uluru holds the memory of all people, all animals, all spirits who have ever passed this way. When someone is born, their spirit may rise from the land near Uluru. When someone dies, their energy returns there, absorbed into the great stone. In this way, the rock is not merely alive, it is a reservoir of life itself, a vessel of ancestral essence.
Visitors often report unusual sensations during their time near Uluru. Some feel lightheaded, others inexplicably calm. A few describe dreams filled with strange imagery or moments of clarity and insight they cannot explain. It is easy to dismiss these experiences as the effects of heat, dehydration, or the majesty of the landscape. But listen to the elders, and you'll hear a different explanation. Uluru is speaking to them, not in words, but in vibration, in feeling, in connection. Even non-Indigenous guides, some of whom have worked at Uluru for decades, describe moments of inexplicable awe. There are stories of birds changing direction mid-flight when approaching certain parts of the rock, of snakes emerging suddenly from crevices as if stirred by some unseen force, of sudden, unexpected changes in weather when certain stories are told too loudly or in the wrong place. None of this is considered coincidence. In Aṉangu belief, it is the spirit of the rock asserting its presence, reminding all who come that this is not a passive place. It is active. It is listening. One of the most potent examples of this energy is found near Aṉangu Gorge, on the northwestern face of the rock. Here, where a natural water channel runs down the cliffside after rare rains, the rock seems to pulse. The sound of falling water, echoing through the gorge, amplifies the sensation of a deep, internal rhythm. Even when dry, the space feels charged, a hollow where stories rest and energy gathers. This area, like many parts of Uluru, is considered Aṉangu, filled with spirit. The Aṉangu avoid certain areas during specific times of the year, not because of physical danger, but because the spiritual energy is too strong or too sacred to enter without proper ceremony. Some parts of the rock are off-limits entirely to outsiders, protected by cultural protocols that recognize the deep potency of the land. Interestingly, some of the stories surrounding Uluru's heartbeat converge with recent scientific theories on telluric currents, natural electric currents that flow underground through the Earth's crust. These currents can fluctuate based on geological composition, moisture levels, and atmospheric conditions. Uluru, being rich in iron and quartz, may act as a natural conductor or amplifier of these currents. In other words, the rock may indeed hum with a kind of earthborn energy, one that affects both the landscape and those who dwell near it. But science, with all its tools, still cannot quantify the sacred. What it can do is support what the Aṉangu have always known, that the rock holds a power beyond understanding, that it is not merely an object of worship, but a participant in the spiritual ecology of the land. There are also stories of healing. Some elders speak of people who have been spiritually unwell, who suffer from what Western medicine might call anxiety, depression, or loss of direction, who have sat quietly near the base of Uluru and returned changed. Not cured, perhaps, but reconnected, grounded. In the Aṉangu worldview, this is not mystical nonsense. It is a natural consequence of being in the presence of a sacred living being. The rock does not judge, but it does respond. It listens with more than ears. It feels with more than touch. It remembers all who pass and absorbs their presence into the dreaming. This is why visitors are asked not to shout, not to climb, not to disrespect, because this place is not empty. It is full, and like any full vessel, it must be approached with care. The heartbeat of Uluru is not just a metaphor. It is a reality, felt by those who take the time to pause, to breathe, to let the noise of the world fall away. In the silence, you may feel it, that slow, steady pulse beneath your feet, a reminder that the earth lives, that stories matter, that law and land are not separate. And as the stars rise over the desert, glittering across the vast black sky, that pulse continues, older than time, deeper than words. In our next chapter, we will explore why the Aṉangu people pleaded for generations to protect Uluru from being climbed, and what it truly meant, culturally and spiritually, when that practice was finally ended. Let us walk the ridge of reverence and understand the sacred reason for saying no.
The forbidden climb. For many years, Uluru stood as both a symbol and a paradox, an icon of Australia seen on postcards and television screens, yet misunderstood at its deepest levels. Travelers came from all corners of the globe, drawn by the rock's magnetic beauty, eager to experience its vastness. For some, climbing it became a challenge, a rite of passage, an adventure to be ticked off the list. They arrived in shorts and wide-brimmed hats, filled with excitement, camera in hand. They looked up at the sandstone slope and thought, let's go up. But for the Aṉangu, traditional owners of Uluru, watching this climb take place was not just heartbreaking, it was sacrilegious. The rock was not a theme park. It was a sacred being, the body of their ancestors, the law incarnate. To walk upon its back without invitation was to wound its spirit, and theirs. The story of the forbidden climb is not just one of cultural protection. It is a lesson in listening, in understanding that not all things are ours to conquer. It is a journey from ignorance to respect, and it is one of the most powerful chapters in the modern story of Uluru. The path that so many once took to the summit of Uluru traces a deeply significant songline, a spiritual pathway embedded in the dreaming. It is the path of the Mala people, whose ceremonial journey we explored earlier. The route they followed up the rock was part of a sacred sequence, known only in full to initiated Aṉangu. Their footprints are not just metaphorical, they are believed to be embedded in the stone, in the form of subtle depressions and marks along the ascent. To walk this route without permission, without ceremony, was to walk through a story you had no right to enter. It was akin to bursting into a cathedral mid-prayer and dancing on the altar. Yet, for decades, thousands did just that, often unaware, sometimes willfully dismissive. From as early as the mid-20th century, tourism brochures openly promoted climbing Uluru. A chain handrail was installed along the slope in the year 1964, and climbing became a central drawcard for many visitors. The view from the top, it was said, was worth the effort. What was rarely mentioned in glossy pamphlets was that every step on the rock was a step across sacred ground, a disruption to ancient ceremony, and a reminder to the Aṉangu of how little their voice had been heard. The Aṉangu people were not silent. They spoke, with dignity, with patience, with repeated pleas, asking visitors not to climb. They explained that the summit of Uluru was not just a high point. It was a place where spiritual energy was concentrated, where powerful ancestors had gathered, where stories too sacred for public sharing were still alive in the stone. Their words were not threats. They were invitations to respect. Over the years, as cultural awareness grew, more signs were installed asking visitors to refrain from climbing. Some listened, many did not. There was confusion, frustration, and, from some quarters, outright resistance. It's my right, some would argue. If it's there, I should be allowed to go up.
But in Aboriginal worldview, the land is not owned. It is cared for. And just because something exists does not mean it is yours to take. There were also practical concerns. The climb was dangerous. The slope is steep and often slippery. The heat unforgiving. Over 30 people lost their lives attempting the ascent. Countless others required rescue. For the Aṉangu, each death was not just a tragedy. It was a burden. They believe that when someone is injured or killed on their land, they carry a spiritual responsibility. They mourn for the soul and for the imbalance its loss causes. Still, for many years, the climb remained open. Then, in the year 2019, after decades of negotiation, cultural education, and growing support from Australians and visitors alike, the Uluru Awakens National Park Board of Management, which includes Aṉangu representatives, made a historic decision. On the 26th of October that year, climbing Uluru was officially banned. It was not a ban in the punitive sense. No fences went up. No guards stood at the base with crossed arms. Instead, the chain was quietly removed, the signs reworded, and the rock, for the first time in a long time, could breathe again. The day the climb closed was not without drama. A final wave of climbers queued at dawn, hoping to be the last to summit before the ban took effect. The images circulated widely, figures clambering upward, silhouetted against the morning sky. For the Aṉangu, it was a difficult day. But it was also a day of triumph, a day when their voice was finally heard, their culture finally honored. Since that time, the energy around Uluru has shifted. The stories have grown louder. The connection between visitors and the land has deepened. More people come now to walk the base trail, to listen to guides, to visit the cultural center, and to sit quietly at dawn or dusk and simply watch the rock change color. And what a change it is. As the sun rises, the sandstone glows, from deep purple to rusted red to brilliant orange. The shadows stretch and curl, revealing fissures and ridges shaped by time, not footfall. The rock no longer endures the weight of bodies climbing its back. It stands now in dignity, unburdened, as it was always meant to. The Aṉangu continue to share their stories. They walk the land with school groups, tourists, researchers, and fellow Australians, helping them understand what Uluru really is. Not a thing to conquer, but a being to respect. This shift from conquest to reverence is part of a broader change. It reflects a growing awareness that Indigenous knowledge systems are not relics of the past. They are vibrant, vital, and essential to Australia's identity. To many visitors, the decision to close the climb has led to a richer, more meaningful experience. Without the pressure to ascend, people stay longer at the base. They notice the details, the way wind carves the stone, the smell of spinifex after rain, the distant call of galas wheeling above. They learn that reverence can be more powerful than achievement. For the Aṉangu, the healing is ongoing. The damage cannot be undone, but the act of listening finally has begun. And with it, a new kind of journey, one based not on height, but on depth. So if you ever find yourself standing at the foot of Uluru, look up, yes, marvel at its scale. But then look around, look down. Feel the earth beneath your feet. Feel the silence, the wind, the weight of story in the air. And remember that some paths are sacred, not because they are forbidden, but because they are meant to remain untouched. Next, we'll walk toward a place of life and renewal, the sacred Mutitjulu waterhole, where the spirit of Kuniya still flows, and where story, water, and stone meet in perfect balance.
Sacred waters of Mutitjulu. Beneath the sun-scorched cliffs of Uluru's southern flank, hidden in a natural curve of the rock, lies a place of quiet refuge, a shimmering oasis in the heart of the Red Desert. This is Mutitjulu, the sacred waterhole, where rock meets water, story meets spirit, and life clings to the edge of stone. To the unknowing eye, it may appear as little more than a shaded pool. But to the Aṉangu people, it is one of the most revered and powerful sights in the world. Here, water gathers in a natural basin after rain, flowing down a deep, dark channel carved into the rock over millions of years. During the dry season, the pool can appear still and silent, its surface like glass, mirroring the sky and overhanging ledges. But even when it shrinks to its smallest form, Mutitjulu holds the essence of life. The Aṉangu say it never truly disappears, for its spirit, like its stories, is always present. This sacred waterhole is intricately tied to the story of Kuniya, the ancestral python woman whose fierce protection of her kin we encountered earlier. Mutitjulu is not merely the site of her vengeance, it is the source of her power, the birthplace of her presence in this land. In the dreaming, Kuniya came from the east, her movements shaping the landscape as she slithered across the desert in human and serpent form. When she reached Uluru, she stopped at this very place, Mutitjulu, to rest, drink, and prepare for what was to come. It was here she learned of the attack on her nephew by Liru, the venomous snake man. It was here her sorrow bloomed into fury. And it was from here that she climbed the rock to confront him. The shape of the land at Mutitjulu still bears her mark. A long groove, darkened by moisture and shadow, runs down the stone wall like a flowing ribbon of grief. The Aṉangu say it is the trace of her spirit, the path her body took as she coiled around the rock, filled with rage and purpose. Beside it, smooth worn rock where she once rested. In the waterhole itself, her essence lingers. But Kuniya's presence at Mutitjulu is not only about vengeance. She is also a symbol of life, protection, and feminine power. The water she guards nourishes the land, and through it, the stories of the people are sustained. The very name Mutitjulu refers to the intertwined nature of the two ancestors, Kuniya and Liru, snake and python, female and male, creation and destruction. Their battle, marked forever into the rock, is echoed in the stillness of the water and the curve of the canyon. For the Aṉangu, Mutitjulu is more than sacred. It is alive. It is treated with utmost respect. Children are taught not to play loudly near it, not to splash, not to shout. Elders visit in silence, sometimes kneeling to touch the water gently, whispering prayers too old and sacred to be translated. Tourists are welcome to view the waterhole, but are gently reminded to behave with care, for this is not a photo stop. It is ceremony in liquid form. Life gathers here too, in ways both visible and mysterious. Native grasses cluster around the edges, nourished by the constant source of moisture. Zebra finches and galas flit from branch to branch. At dawn and dusk, wallabies come to drink, stepping softly across the sand. Even in the dry months, life remembers this place. It is written into their instincts, just as it is written into the stone.
From a scientific perspective, Mutitjulu is an impressive geological feature. The waterhole is fed by a natural catchment system that channels rainfall down the rock's surface, funneling it into crevices and gullies. Uluru's curved flanks create the perfect conditions for water to flow and pool in sheltered pockets. And yet, even science cannot explain why the water feels different here. Cooler, older, wiser. Visitors who sit quietly at the edge of Mutitjulu often describe a sense of calm they cannot explain. Some say they feel watched, not in fear, but in reverence, as though the rock itself is aware of their presence, as though the water, pooled and still, knows their thoughts. It is a place that invites stillness, not just of body, but of mind. In Aṉangu culture, water is never taken for granted. It is a gift, not a resource. It carries story and responsibility. The act of collecting water, even from a sacred site like Mutitjulu, is ceremonial, not routine. In the past, women would approach the pool with great care, cupping their hands slowly, never taking more than was needed. They understood that Kuniya watched. One of the most remarkable aspects of Mutitjulu is the way it holds contradiction. It is both gentle and powerful, a place of peace, and the starting point of a deadly battle. It is sacred to women, and yet its story involves a violent confrontation. It provides life, yet it exists in a harsh, arid land where water is rare and precious. In this way, Mutitjulu mirrors the truths of the dreaming, that creation and destruction are intertwined, that all life contains conflict, and that from sorrow can come healing. In more recent times, the name Mutitjulu has come to represent more than just the waterhole. It is also the name of the small Aboriginal community located just a short distance from the rock. The residents are descendants of the Aṉangu, who have lived in this region for countless generations. Their lives are shaped by the same stories that flow through the waterhole, their children taught to honor the land as their grandparents did, in language, in ceremony, in silence. For many years, the community worked tirelessly to have the importance of Mutitjulu and other sacred sites recognized and protected. When Uluru was handed back to the traditional owners in the year 1985, it marked a turning point, not just politically, but spiritually. Since then, the management of the park has been shared, with decisions guided by cultural law as well as environmental science. Mutitjulu is protected not by fences, but by story. Today, when visitors walk the trail leading to the waterhole, they pass signs written in Pitjantjatjara and English. The signs tell of Kuniya's journey, of the fight with Liru, and of the sacredness of the place ahead. But the real understanding does not come from reading. It comes from stopping, from sitting on the sand, from watching the light shift on the rock wall and feeling the air cool as you approach the water. And if you are lucky, or perhaps if you are simply quiet enough, you might hear the faintest ripple as a breeze moves across the surface of the pool. You might see a dragonfly land, pause, then rise again. You might feel something stir in the space around you, as though a spirit has passed close, acknowledging your presence. That is Kuniya, that is Tjukurpa, that is Uluru, offering not spectacle, but connection. In the next chapter, we'll lift our eyes to the sky above Uluru, to the stars that once guided the ancestors, whose stories were written not only in stone and sand, but in the constellations above. Let us journey into the night and discover the dreaming woven across the heavens.
The night sky over Uluru. As the sun sinks behind the silhouette of Uluru and the last golden rays retreat from its sandstone flanks, a new canvas unfolds overhead, vast, inky, and infinite. The desert sky, unpolluted by city light, becomes a living scroll of stars. Here, beneath the red center's heavens, the constellations shine with a clarity that stirs something deep and ancient in the soul. For the Aṉangu and countless other Aboriginal peoples across Australia, this night sky is not empty space. It is full of meaning, full of ancestors, full of stories. It is the celestial dreaming. To lie on your back in the cool sand near the base of Uluru and look up is to enter a different kind of sacred space. The stars above are not strangers. They are kin. The Aṉangu believe that the sky is a mirror of the land below, and every feature in the heavens has a corresponding spirit, place, or pathway on Earth. In this worldview, astronomy is not a science separate from life. It is embedded in survival, spirituality, and law. The Milky Way stretches from one horizon to the other, like a great river of light. But in Aboriginal cosmology, it is more than a galaxy. To the Western Desert peoples, this glowing band is often interpreted as Walpa, the wind spirit's path, or the river of the sky, flowing with ancestral beings. The dark patches within it are not empty spaces, but sacred shapes, figures formed by what isn't there, just as much as by what is. One of the most important of these shapes is Tjukurpa, the emu in the sky. Unlike European stargazers who connect stars to form their constellations, many Aboriginal groups, including those around Uluru, see shapes in the absence, the dark clouds against the brightness of the Milky Way. The emu stretches across the night, with its head near the Southern Cross and its body extending westward. In the dreaming, this celestial emu reflects the emu tracks on Earth, and its appearance in the sky signals the time for collecting emu eggs, a reminder that the sky gives not just stories, but seasonal knowledge. The Southern Cross, known to the Aṉangu and other language groups by different names, is not just a navigational tool. It is a spiritual compass. Some view it as a totemic symbol, others as a gathering of ancestral spirits who look down from their perch in the heavens. Its orientation changes through the seasons, and like a slow-moving clock, it tells time not in minutes, but in moons.
Stories of the stars are passed down orally, not as abstract myths, but as teachings with purpose. They guide when to plant, when to hunt, when to hold ceremonies. The Pleiades, or Seven Sisters, are known widely across Aboriginal Australia. In many traditions, they are pursued across the sky by a lone male figure, often associated with the constellation Orion. This story, found in remarkably similar forms across distant language groups, tells of longing, movement, and the nature of cosmic balance. The sisters, full of grace and knowledge, are chased night after night, never caught, a lesson, some say, about boundaries, persistence, and the rhythms of courtship and respect. Among the Aṉangu, the stories of the stars are not always shared publicly. They are often considered sacred, passed from elder to younger with care, and only when the learner is ready. But what is shared universally is the understanding that the sky and the land are one system. The stars are part of Tjukurpa, not separate from it. Just as Uluru holds stories in its caves and cliffs, the sky holds stories in its stars and shadows. When a person dies, their spirit may rise into the night sky. Some stars are said to be wati, ancestral men watching over the land. Others are minima, the women who sing the land awake. These spirits guide, protect, and remind the living of their place in the great continuity of existence. The stars are not distant suns, they are relatives. In this vast theater of light, time moves differently. The past is not behind us, nor the future ahead. It swirls above in the same patterns it always has, cycling through dreaming with grace. Aṉangu elders speak of looking up to look back, of reading the stars not to forecast, but to remember. Each constellation holds a memory, a story, a rule. They are mnemonic tools, painted across the night to ensure that no law is forgotten. For thousands of years, long before telescopes or satellites, the people of the desert used this celestial map to navigate their world. Songlines, the vast invisible highways that crisscross the continent, are tied to the stars. A man could walk for hundreds of kilometers, guided not by landmarks, but by songs linked to constellations. Each verse matched a feature in the sky. To know the song was to know the way. In this way, dreaming stories were also maps, not symbolic, but literal, linking earth to sky and heart to horizon. In recent years, this traditional star knowledge has gained new recognition. Aboriginal astronomy, once overlooked or dismissed by Western science, is now being studied for its precision and complexity. Astronomers have confirmed that many traditional stories align closely with celestial events. The rising of certain stars does indeed signal seasonal changes, and certain constellations are visible only during key ecological periods. What Western science is now uncovering, Aboriginal people have known all along. At Uluru, this knowledge is lived, not stored in books. It is spoken under the stars, whispered in language, chanted in ceremony. It is passed between generations not through screens or scrolls, but in shared breath beneath shared sky. Visitors sometimes ask, "What's the best time to see the stars?" The answer, gently offered, is, "When you're ready to see them." Because to truly see the stars of Uluru is not just to look up, it is to feel the connection that runs from the rock beneath you to the heavens above. So if you find yourself beneath that great desert sky, don't rush. Lie down. Let your eyes adjust. Let the chill of the night wrap around you like a story waiting to be told. And as the constellations emerge one by one, know that each of them holds a lesson. Each is part of a dreaming that has no beginning and no end. From the heavens, we now return to the earth, to another powerful story pulsing beneath the surface. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the legend of the Rainbow Serpent, said to sleep under Uluru's red stone heart. Creator, destroyer, and guardian of balance, her presence changes everything. Let us now go deeper beneath the surface into the sacred coils of creation.
The Rainbow Serpent sleeps. Deep beneath the sun-baked surface of Uluru, beneath the rust-colored stone and ancient songlines, sleeps a force older than time, a being whose breath shaped rivers, whose spine carved mountains, and whose coils still pulse beneath the skin of the land. She is Aṉangu, the Rainbow Serpent, one of the most powerful and universal ancestral spirits in Aboriginal Australia. She is not merely myth, she is presence. And to the Aṉangu people of the Red Centre, she is both creator and keeper, a guardian whose body lies curled in the sacred places of the earth, including beneath Uluru itself. The story of the Rainbow Serpent is not told lightly. Her name varies across language groups, and each region holds its own version of her journey. But the essence is shared. Aṉangu is a great snake-like being of water and color, movement and mystery. She is linked to the underground streams, to the permanent waterholes, to the breath of the desert when the rains finally come. And though her scales shimmer with every hue of the sky, her nature is not merely beautiful. She is balance, and balance includes the power to destroy. The Aṉangu say that deep below Uluru, she sleeps, her enormous form coiled within the earth, wrapped around the ancient waters that nourish the land from within. She rests in silence, but she is never still. Her dreams shape the world. Her moods echo in storms and droughts. Her presence is what keeps the underground waters flowing to the sacred waterholes like Mutitjulu. If disturbed, she can rise. And when she rises, she does not come gently. Uluru itself is believed by some to be a place of Aṉangu's emergence, a place where she once surfaced to shape the land and carve the veins of water into the desert's heart. The sinuous gullies that run down the rock, the dark grooves and twisting chasms. These are read not only as natural features, but as traces of her movement, signs of her great body sliding across the stone in the dreaming. One such place is a rock formation not far from Mutitjulu. It curves and coils like a snake frozen mid-motion. Elders explain that this is part of Aṉangu's body, visible above ground. The rest lies beneath, unseen, but felt. In many dreaming stories, the Rainbow Serpent emerged after the world was formed, but still unshaped, a flat, featureless expanse without rivers, hills, or creatures. She traveled across the land, carving channels with her great body, creating waterholes with her belly, and bringing forth the animals and plants from the earth as she moved. Where she rested, pools formed. Where she turned, valleys appeared. And where she became angry, the land cracked.
But her power is not random. Aṉangu acts to restore balance. If the land is mistreated, if law is broken, if the sacred places are disrespected, she may rise again, not as a vengeful god, but as a force of equilibrium. This is why her presence beneath Uluru is approached with such deep reverence. Visitors are not told this to frighten them. They are told so they understand. This is not a place for recklessness. The caves near Mutitjulu are said to be places where she once rose to the surface and where her spirit lingers even now. Some are open to certain ceremonies. Others are closed to all but initiated elders. The energy in these spaces is palpable. People speak of feeling watched, or of sudden shifts in temperature, or of strange dreams after visiting the area. Elders smile at these stories. They do not dismiss them. They simply say, "Wanampi knows you came." To children, the Rainbow Serpent is a lesson in caution and in awe. They are taught that she gives life, that she brings the rains, that her movement stirs the roots and calls the grasses forth after the dry season. But they are also taught that she must be respected. That carelessness in sacred places, pollution, noise, thoughtlessness, may upset her rest. And when she is disturbed, nothing good follows. The rain in this land is rare. But when it comes with force. Thunder rolls across the desert like a drumbeat from deep time. Lightning cracks overhead, and the water flows down Uluru's flanks in temporary waterfalls, thousands of years compressed into minutes. It is during these storms that some say Wanampi stirs. Her colors flash in the sky, reflected in arcs of lightning. Her roar echoes in the thunder. Her tears, perhaps, fill the waterholes that sustain all life here. From a geological point of view, Uluru's underground water system is extraordinary. Though rainfall is minimal, the rock's shape channels water into hidden reservoirs beneath the surface. These aquifers feed permanent and semi-permanent waterholes, like Mutitjulu, and support ecosystems that should, by all logic, not survive in such an arid climate. Scientists measure flow rates and rock permeability. The Aṉangu speak of Wanampi. Both are observing the same phenomenon, but only one tells it as part of a living story. Interestingly, the Rainbow Serpent is not exclusive to the Aṉangu. Across Australia, from Arnhem Land to the Kimberley, from the coastal rainforests to the western deserts, different Aboriginal nations tell of her, or him, or they, for gender is not always fixed in dreaming beings. Names change, but the message remains. Water is sacred, and so are the forces that move it. Some dreamings describe Wanampi as a shapeshifter, able to take human form when necessary. In these stories, she sometimes marries a human or teaches sacred knowledge. Other stories describe her as a guardian of law, punishing those who act without respect. In all versions, her role is central to the functioning of the world. At Uluru, this story takes on even deeper resonance, for the rock itself seems to embody her presence. It moves without moving, it breathes without breath, it holds power that is never shouted, but always known. The Rainbow Serpent's sleep beneath Uluru is not a sleep of ignorance. It is the sleep of deep awareness. She knows every footstep taken above her, every voice that echoes across the stone, every raindrop that wakes her dreams. The Aṉangu elders speak to her in ceremony, honoring her with chants and smoke. They ask her to continue resting, to continue feeding the land. And she does, so long as her law is respected. Tourists often ask, "Can we see her?" The answer is no and yes. You see her in the curves of the land, in the flash of water in the desert, in the sound of thunder across the empty plain. And if you listen closely enough, if you sit quietly at twilight near the rock's base, you might feel her breath beneath your feet, slow, steady, eternal. In the next chapter, we will explore how the rock seems to change, not just in mood, but in color, texture, and presence, as if it responds to the world around it. Some say Uluru breathes, some say it lives. Let us now uncover the mystery of the rock that breathes.
Rock that breathes. There are moments in the desert when silence falls so completely it becomes a sound of its own. It presses gently against your skin, nestles into your breath, and asks you to listen, not with your ears, but with your whole body. And in that stillness, if you're patient, you may begin to notice something extraordinary. Uluru is not still at all. It shifts, it pulses, it changes with light and air and time. Some say it breathes. From a distance, Uluru appears solid, immovable, a great stone giant rising from the plain like the back of an ancient sleeping beast. But approach it slowly, and its illusion of permanence begins to falter. The color is not one color. It shifts, from pale violet to blazing ochre, then to charcoal red as dusk sets in. Its surface is not smooth, but pocked with hollows, creased with age, and scarred with the paths of ancestral beings. The Aṉangu people have always known this, that Uluru is alive, not metaphorically, truly alive in a spiritual sense. The rock responds. It is in relationship with all that surrounds it. When the sun rises, it wakes. When the rain falls, it sings. When lightning cracks across the sky, it stirs from deep within. Geologists describe Uluru as an inselberg, a mountain island formed from Arcosic sandstone over more than 500 million years. Its formation began in an ancient sea, with layers of sediment compressed and tilted by massive tectonic forces. What remains today is the exposed spine of a world long buried. But to the Aṉangu, this geological story is only one thread in a far more intricate tapestry. The true explanation lies in Tjukurpa, the ancestral law and dreaming that shapes and animates all of existence. The breath of Uluru is not measured in lungs or heartbeat. It is felt in the way light dances across its face, in the way shadows move like fingers, in the way temperature shifts along its surface, cool in the gullies, hot on the wind-swept ridges. Walk around it, and the rock seems to change with each step. The color deepens, the texture roughens. Shapes emerge and vanish again, like spirits ducking behind curtains. Scientists have long been fascinated by Uluru's unique thermal properties. The rock absorbs heat rapidly during the day, particularly its iron-rich minerals, which give it the signature red hue. At night, it releases that warmth slowly, as if exhaling. This process is natural, predictable, even measurable. But what science cannot explain is the feeling, the way visitors report sensing that the rock is responding to them. Not just a stone warming and cooling, but a presence adjusting to the people nearby. Many Aṉangu elders speak of this sensation as Ngankari awareness, a kind of spiritual sensitivity felt by those attuned to country. They say that Uluru knows who walks upon it, that it welcomes those who come in respect and warns those who do not. It is not superstition, it is relationship. The land is not passive, it is active, and it remembers.
Visitors often describe moments of deep emotional clarity while walking the base trail, especially near Aṉangu Gorge or the caves of Mutitjulu. These are places where the rock narrows, draws inward, encloses you like a womb of ancient memory. Some have broken into tears without understanding why. Others feel a sudden sense of calm or a presence walking beside them. One traveler once said it felt like the rock was breathing with me, slower than me, older than me, but with me. Photographers are among those most struck by Uluru's responsiveness. No two images are ever the same. Even when taken from the same vantage point on the same day, the colors shift dramatically. It is not merely the sun's angle, it is the interplay of moisture, dust, and perhaps something else, something unseen. Local guides often say that Uluru only shows what it wants to be seen, that what you capture is what the rock allows you to remember. When the rains fall, a rare and precious event in the desert, the change is even more dramatic. Water cascades down the flanks of Uluru in silver ribbons, transforming it from silent sentinel to weeping ancestor. The iron-rich surface, normally dry and warm, turns slick and reflective. Water gathers in ancient grooves and trickles into sacred waterholes. The rock darkens to near black in places. This is when the Aṉangu say Uluru is crying, mourning old wounds, renewing old stories. During such rains, visitors have described the rock as quivering, not shaking like an earthquake, but vibrating faintly, like the hum of breath through a didgeridoo. Whether it's the rhythm of water striking stone or the shifting of wind against heated air, something moves, something stirs. The presence of Wanampi, the Rainbow Serpent, is said to be closest in these moments. Her body beneath the earth absorbs the rain and passes it to the life above. At night, when the temperature drops and the desert lies under a velvet sky, Uluru releases its heat in waves. Stand near it then, and you may feel the ground beneath your feet radiate back to the stars. The rock, so solid in the day, now glows softly, not with light, but with warmth. And if you place your palm gently against it, you may feel it pulse, the land's quiet respiration. Western science has a name for some of these phenomena: thermal inertia, capillary seepage, albedo effect. But none of those terms can describe what it is to feel watched by a rock that has stood for 500 million years, to feel recognized by it. Aṉangu stories speak of beings sleeping within Uluru, ancestors who carved the world, then laid down to rest. Their breath moves through the caves and gorges. Their dreams shape the creatures that live nearby. Some say that the rock changes color in response to the moods of these beings. When they are content, Uluru shines orange and gold. When they are stirred or mournful, it darkens to purple and deep red. Guides often share a simple truth: the rock reflects you. Come with peace, and it will calm you. Come with haste or arrogance, and it will resist. Like a mirror of soul and sky, Uluru offers back what you bring, magnified, ancient, and made sacred by the telling. This sense of reciprocity is key to understanding why climbing the rock was forbidden, why its stories are protected, and why visitors are asked to walk with care. Uluru is not a thing to be conquered. It is a being to be honored. So as you stand before it, whether in dawn's first light or under the stars, breathe. Let your rhythm slow. Let your feet rest in the red dust. And listen, not with ears, but with everything you are. Because here, in this ancient heart of Australia, the rock is still breathing. And if you listen, it just might breathe with you. Next, we walk into stories carried not by wind or light, but by mistake, to the pieces of Uluru taken from the land, removed by those who didn't know or didn't listen. We'll explore the curse of stolen stones and the silent warnings etched into their journey. Let us now uncover the truth of cursed stones and silent warnings.
Cursed stones and silent warnings. In the gift shops and visitor centers near Uluru, there is a small display that draws both curiosity and a strange sense of unease. It's not flashy or promoted. In fact, it sits off to the side, quiet, humble. Just a glass case filled with letters, worn envelopes, and small reddish stones. On each envelope is a name, a date, and usually a short, remorseful message. I'm sorry. Please put this back. It doesn't belong to me. These are the cursed stones of Uluru, fragments of the rock taken over decades by tourists who couldn't resist slipping a small piece into their pocket or bag. Some thought it harmless. Others hoped to take home a souvenir of their journey. But almost all of them eventually came to regret it. The Aṉangu people have long spoken of the sacredness of Uluru's stone. To remove even the smallest piece is to break the connection between land and spirit, to fracture Tjukurpa. the ancient law that governs not only people, but the very bones of the world. And those who do take a piece often report that something follows them home. Not a ghost, exactly. Not a shadow. But a string of misfortunes, like pebbles dropped behind them, leading back to where they should never have stepped. For decades now, people from around the world have sent rocks back to the park, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with fear. There are letters from all walks of life, a newlywed whose honeymoon was marred by constant illness after pocketing a stone, a tradesman who lost his job, his car, and nearly his marriage before realizing he'd taken a handful of sand from the base of Uluru, a student whose grandmother fell ill days after he returned from the Red Center with a piece of the sacred rock tucked into his luggage. The letters often begin with a confession. Then they offer an apology. Finally, they ask, "Can you please put it back?" But the truth is, once removed, these pieces can never truly be returned. The stone is not just geology, it is body, and when a piece is taken, that body is wounded. Aṉangu rangers receive these packages with grace. They do not scold, they do not mock. They understand that ignorance is common, and that remorse, however late, is still a form of respect. But the stones are not simply placed back. They are brought to a resting place, out of sight, away from the paths, not reattached to the rock, but laid in ceremony, with words to the spirits, asking forgiveness. This is not superstition. This is law. The Aṉangu do not claim that a person will be cursed in the Hollywood sense. No flickering lights, no apparitions in the hallway. What they explain is this: when a piece of sacred land is taken from its home, the spirit within it becomes displaced. That displacement causes imbalance. And imbalance, when ignored, ripples outward, into homes, into hearts, into health. It may manifest as misfortune. It may appear as a string of unlikely bad luck, or it may simply weigh on the soul until the person feels they must make it right.
Even rangers and guides, not all of whom are Aṉangu, have witnessed the strange power of these stones. One longtime park worker once said, "It's like the land is calling them back. They arrive in the post like little messages from the earth, and everyone has a story." There are stories of rocks turning up years later in estate sales, in garage clear-outs, in forgotten boxes from old trips. The new owners, unaware of the rock's origin, begin to experience a run of misfortune until someone connects the dots, traces the label, and sees the name, Uluru. Some tourists laugh off the warnings, dismissing them as folk tales or cultural exaggeration. But those who have taken a piece and then lived with the aftermath speak differently. Their testimonies are not dramatic. They are quiet, troubled, and always tinged with a desire to put things right. In many cultures, taking from a sacred site is considered taboo, but at Uluru, the consequences are not enforced by people. They are enforced by relationship. The rock does not punish. It simply remembers. And in doing so, it unsettles those who forget their place within its story. The Aṉangu have tried for decades to educate visitors before the mistake is made. Signs posted along the walking trails clearly ask that no part of the rock, not stones, not sand, not even dried leaves, be taken away. Cultural center exhibits explain the importance of maintaining the integrity of the site. But still, each year, rocks are stolen, and each year, they are returned. Some of the returned stones come from as far as Europe, Asia, and the Americas. One parcel arrived from Canada with a note inside. "Ever since I took this, my life has not been the same. I lost my job, my dog died, and my house flooded. I didn't believe in curses, but now I believe in respect. Please give this back." Another came from a child who had visited the park with their family. In neat, round handwriting, they wrote, "I didn't know it was special. I'm sorry for taking it. I want the rock to be whole again." Perhaps the most haunting letter came from an elderly man who had carried a small piece of Uluru in his wallet for over 20 years. He wrote that in all that time, he had never felt at peace. "It's time to let go," he said. "Tell the spirits I didn't mean to offend." What these stories show is not that Uluru is a place of punishment, but that it is a place of connection. And when that connection is broken, the dissonance is felt, not as thunder or fire, but as an ache, an unease, a pull that only returns to balance when the stone is given back and the relationship restored. In recent years, tourism operators have placed greater emphasis on cultural respect. Park rangers now gently guide visitors with stories rather than rules. Guides explain not just what the land is, but who it is. And slowly, understanding grows. The cursed stones are no longer a secret. They are reminders. Each one is a testament, not to superstition, but to the enduring presence of Uluru's spirit and to the deep wisdom of those who have walked this land for tens of thousands of years. So if you find yourself at the foot of the rock, hands brushing the red dust, let your instinct be one of reverence. Take photos, take memories, take time to sit and listen, but do not take the stone. It is not yours to carry. And if you have, give it back. The rock is waiting. It always remembers. In our next journey, we follow the lines that connect Uluru to the rest of the continent, invisible tracks that crisscross the desert, carrying stories, law, and memory. Let us now walk the dreaming tracks that cross the desert.
Dreaming tracks that cross the desert. At first glance, the Australian desert seems endless, a vast canvas of ochre and scrub that stretches beyond sight. But to the Aṉangu and other Aboriginal peoples, the land is not empty. It is marked, woven through with invisible pathways, sacred trails that crisscross the country like arteries through a living body. These are the dreaming tracks, known in many languages as songlines, ancient journeys of ancestral beings, inscribed in land and sky, linking one sacred site to another across thousands of kilometers. Uluru is not an isolated place. It is a node, a crossroads, a pulsing heart where multiple dreaming tracks converge. The rock is both destination and departure point, a ceremonial hub that connects people and places far beyond its red cliffs. To follow a dreaming track is to follow the footsteps of creation. Each one carries the stories of beings who shaped the world, great serpents, marsupial men, bird women, spirit children, and elemental forces. These tracks are not metaphorical. They are literal, living pathways. They shape how people move, how they think, how they sing the land awake. In the Aṉangu tradition, these tracks are Tjukurpa Nyangacha, not just stories, but law. They guide where to walk, when to hunt, how to perform ceremony. To walk a dreaming track is to participate in a continual act of remembering. And like the veins beneath your skin, these tracks are often unseen to the outsider, but they are always there. One of the most well-known songlines converging at Uluru is the Mala track, which we explored earlier. It follows the journey of the Mala people, ancestral beings who arrived from the northwest to conduct sacred ceremony. Their path is imprinted on the northern flank of Uluru, continuing beyond the rock into distant lands. The features left in their wake, caves, ridges, even subtle changes in vegetation, mark their presence. But their story does not end at Uluru. It moves on, carried through dance, chant, and story to other communities, other sites. Each community along the way adds its verse to the song. Then there is the Kuniya track from the east, tracing the journey of the powerful Python woman who came to defend her nephew. Her dreaming track winds through the desert, across dry riverbeds, and through spinifex-covered country, joining Uluru at the sacred Mutitjulu waterhole. But she does not end there either. Her spirit travels further, curling beneath the earth, connecting waterholes and underground springs far beyond the tourist maps. Other tracks lead in from the south, the west, the far reaches of the Gibson and Great Victoria deserts. They bring with them the Liru, the venomous snake man, the Tjukurpa, the emu spirit, and countless other ancestral figures known intimately by local people. Each one carries teachings of creation, conflict, harmony, survival.
What binds these tracks together is song. The word songline may seem poetic, but it is precise. These tracks are sung. Every feature of the land, every hill, tree, waterhole, and stone has a corresponding note, word, or phrase. A songline is, in essence, a musical map. By singing it, Aboriginal people can navigate vast distances, finding their way through the desert without compass or GPS, guided by memory encoded in melody. To sing is to move. To move is to honor the ancestors, and to honor them is to keep the land alive. One songline might take weeks to traverse. Another might cross the entire continent. Some are known by only a handful of elders, guarded carefully like sacred texts. Others are communal, passed on in ceremony and performance. But all are part of a living network, as vital as any highway system. More so, perhaps, because they do not just move people. They move culture. At Uluru, the air itself seems to remember these songs. Elders say that when you walk certain paths, you can feel the vibration of the tracks underfoot. Not as sound, but as presence. You step differently. You speak differently. You become part of something older than your own story. Songlines also link language groups. Australia is home to hundreds of Aboriginal languages, each with its own rhythms and structures. Yet the dreaming tracks transcend these boundaries. A song might shift in language as it moves across the country, but its essence remains the same. Like a river changing color as it flows through different soils, the song adapts but never loses its source. In this way, the dreaming tracks form the original trade routes, diplomatic channels, and spiritual lifelines of the continent. One particularly famous track links Uluru with Mutitjulu, the cluster of majestic domed rocks about 30 kilometers to the west. The songline connecting these two sites tells of Kuniya and Mutitjulu, ancestral beings who interacted here, shaping the hills and crevices between them. The stories told at Uluru do not make sense in isolation. They are part of a conversation carried across vast tracts of land. Just as Uluru breathes, the songlines whisper. The recognition of songlines as cultural treasures has gained ground in recent years. Projects led by Aboriginal custodians have worked to record and map these tracks, not in the sense of capturing or freezing them, but in the sense of protecting them from erasure. Some songlines were broken during colonization, when people were forcibly removed from their lands, but others remain strong, passed on in quiet, deliberate ceremony. They are not lost. They are waiting. To walk a dreaming track with an elder is an experience few outsiders are granted, but those who have speak of it with awe. The elder may begin to hum, then sing. Each verse is tied to a tree, a stone, a change in soil color. The rhythm matches the landscape. The land and the song become inseparable. The walker becomes listener. The listener becomes part of the track. In a Western worldview, the land is a resource to be measured, owned, developed. But in the Aboriginal worldview, the land is a relation. It gives life, not just physically, but spiritually. The dreaming tracks are its voice. They hold the ethics of care, the rules of behavior, the deep codes of connection. They are not history. They are now. At Uluru, these tracks converge like lines of energy. That is why so many people, even those unaware of the stories, report feeling something profound when they arrive. It is not just the rock. It is the crossing of journeys, the meeting of old spirits, the pulse of movement held in stillness. Visitors often ask, "What is the best walk at Uluru?" There is no one answer. Each path, each circuit follows the edge of an ancient song. To walk them is not just exercise, it is participation, but only if you listen. So next time you set foot in the red dust, stop, close your eyes, feel for the tracks beneath you, the invisible threads humming with story. You are standing on a line that stretches farther than you can imagine and deeper than you can see. In our next chapter, we shift from the timeless movement of ancestors to a more recent and complex story, the arrival of the white man and the impact of colonization on the land and its people. Let us now explore the history of Uluru and the white man's arrival, a tale of loss, conflict, resilience, and a long path toward reconciliation.
Uluru and the white man's arrival. When the first European explorers stumbled into the vastness of Central Australia in the 19th century, they saw a land that to them seemed silent, empty, and untouched. Their maps were blank, their compasses unreliable, and as they crested the ridges and red dunes of what they called the outback, they encountered something that brought them to a halt, a towering red monolith that rose from the earth like a dream made stone. They named it Ayers Rock, after the Chief Secretary of South Australia, Henry Ayers. To them, it was a marvel of geology. To the Aṉangu, it was already ancient, already full, already named. What the settlers and explorers failed to see, what generations would fail to recognize, was that this land was not empty. It was full of story, spirit, and law. The rock was not a discovery, it was a relative. The arrival of the white man at Uluru marked the beginning of a painful chapter in the region's history, one of misunderstanding, dispossession, and slow, hard-won healing. For the Aṉangu people, the coming of Europeans meant not only the loss of land, but the disruption of Tjukurpa, the sacred code that links people to place. Songlines were interrupted, ceremonies were forced underground. Stories once told openly were now whispered or silenced. The earliest documented European to see Uluru was William Gosse, who came upon the rock in the year 1873 during an expedition funded by the South Australian government. His journal entry noted the remarkable rock formation, and he named it for his colonial patron. He could not pronounce the local name, Uluru, nor did he appear to understand that it already had one. The landscape he crossed was mapped not in miles, but in song. But his own map held only blank spaces and European ambition. In the decades that followed, settlers brought sheep and cattle, attempting to graze in the harsh desert climate. Water was scarce, and the land, shaped by delicate cycles of fire and rain, was not made for such heavy-hooved animals. Sacred sites were trampled, ceremonial grounds were fenced. The spiritual balance, so carefully maintained by the Aṉangu over thousands of generations, began to fracture. With colonization came the enforcement of new laws, foreign rules that neither acknowledged nor respected indigenous culture. The Aṉangu were pushed off their land or coerced into settlements. Many were denied the right to speak their language or practice ceremony. Children were removed from families as part of what would come to be known as the stolen generations, a policy designed to assimilate Aboriginal children into white society. These policies, supported by governments well into the 20th century, tore families apart and nearly severed the threads of cultural continuity.
Yet, through all this, the Aṉangu endured. Elders continued to teach in secret. Songs were passed quietly from parent to child. Ceremonies were held under starlight, out of sight. The land remembered, even when governments did not. By the mid-20th century, Uluru had become a tourist destination. Roads were built. Hotels sprang up near the base. A campground was established right against the rock. Tourists climbed it, photographed it, picnicked on it. None of this was done with the consultation of traditional owners. To the visitors, it was an adventure. To the Aṉangu, it was desecration. Throughout this time, Aṉangu voices were not silent. They asked over and over to be heard. They explained the importance of the site, its sacred places, its stories, the significance of the climb. But their words were met with polite dismissal or outright denial. The land had been claimed, titled, and managed by the government. The people who had lived there for tens of thousands of years had been written out of the narrative. Then, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, a shift began to take root. The Aboriginal land rights movement, growing in strength across Australia, gained political traction. The Aṉangu elders, patient and steadfast, brought their case to the government. They asked not for compensation, but for justice, the return of their ancestral land. On the 26th of October, 1985, that justice came. In a quiet but powerful ceremony, a young Aṉangu man named Vincent Nipper held up the title deed to Uluru and returned it to the elders. The moment was watched by people across the country. It marked the official handback of Uluru, a legal recognition of what had always been spiritually true. Yet even this act was bittersweet. The Aṉangu agreed to lease the land back to the Australian government for 99 years, to be managed jointly as a national park. This arrangement gave them a voice, finally, in the stewardship of their own country. But it also meant sharing sacred space with the demands of tourism and bureaucracy. Progress, it seemed, would come slowly, and only with compromise. Still, the elders pressed forward. They worked with park managers to educate visitors, erecting signs and exhibits that explained the cultural significance of Uluru. They requested, with deep respect, that people stop climbing the rock. Slowly, that message began to take root. In the year 2019, after years of advocacy and debate, the climb was officially closed. The chain was removed. The signs were changed. The rock, once treated as a trophy, was allowed to stand in dignity. For the Aṉangu, this was more than policy. It was healing. A wound, long open, had finally begun to close. Today, the story of Uluru and the white man's arrival is not one of simple conflict or guilt. It is a complex tapestry of pain, resilience, ignorance, learning, and above all, relationship. Many visitors now come not to conquer the rock, but to listen to it, to walk the base trail with a local guide, to sit in silence at dawn, to acknowledge that this place has always been more than beautiful. It has been sacred. The cultural center at Uluru stands as a testament to this new chapter. Built in a style that reflects Aboriginal architecture, it houses exhibits in both English and Pitjantjatjara, the language of the Aṉangu. Here, stories are told by those who hold them. Videos of elders speak truth to history. Children learn not just names and dates, but meaning. And in this way, the land is reawakened. Reconciliation is not a single event. It is a process, one that requires time, honesty, and a willingness to be uncomfortable. The story of Uluru's colonization is not easy to hear, but it must be heard. Because in listening, we honor not just the past, but the possibility of a better future. As the sun sets over Uluru and the sky deepens to violet, the rock glows with its familiar fire. But within it, the pulse of memory beats. The songs are still sung, the dreaming still lives, and the land, ever patient, continues to teach. In our final chapter, we turn to those who keep these stories alive, the guardians of Uluru. We explore how the Aṉangu people walk the line between tradition and modernity, protecting the rock, their law, and their culture in a world that is always changing. Let us now honor the guardians of the rock.
The guardians of the rock. As the first light touches the curves of Uluru, the red stone shifts into hues of rose and amber, glowing as if lit from within. The rock is silent, but not still. Beneath the surface, stories stir, and walking those stories, carrying them forward, protecting them, and living them, are the Aṉangu, the traditional custodians of Uluru. They are not its owners in the Western sense. They are its guardians. The Aṉangu people have lived in the central desert for tens of thousands of years. Their connection to Uluru is not one of possession, but of kinship. The rock is an ancestor, a teacher, a spiritual being, and in return for its gifts, the people hold a responsibility, one that transcends time, politics, and even survival. That responsibility is to care for Uluru, to uphold Tjukurpa, and to pass on the stories that shape identity, law, and land. Today, that responsibility is more complex than ever. Being a guardian of Uluru in the 21st century means walking in two worlds. On one hand, there is the deep time of Aboriginal tradition, the songlines, ceremonies, and kinship structures that have endured for millennia. On the other, there is the modern Australia of tourism, legislation, and media. The challenge is to hold space for both without compromising either. For many Aṉangu, this begins with education. At the heart of Uluru Kata Tjuta National Park is the Cultural Center, a place built not just for tourists, but for cultural exchange. It tells the stories of Uluru from an Aṉangu perspective, in their own words and language. Exhibits explain the importance of Tjukurpa, the meaning of sacred sites, and the spiritual obligations passed from elder to youth. Videos show Aṉangu artists at work, painting the stories of the land onto canvas, bark, or the earth itself. But the real education happens out on country. Local guides, often younger members of the community trained by elders, take visitors on walking tours around Uluru's base. They point out the subtle signs that outsiders often miss: a shift in the rock's texture, a particular cluster of plants, a quiet curve where a story begins. They do not share everything. Some knowledge is restricted, sacred, known only to initiated men or women. But what they do share is given generously, with care and patience. It is not just information, it is invitation, to see with different eyes, to listen with the heart.
This transfer of knowledge is a constant process within Aṉangu communities. Elders teach the next generation not just through words, but through ceremony, observation, and experience. Children learn the dreaming stories of their clan. They learn to read the land, to track animals, to feel the seasons shift not by calendar, but by subtle changes in color, wind, and bird call. They learn respect for land, for law, for each other. In recent decades, cultural revival has taken on renewed urgency. Years of dispossession, language loss, and systemic discrimination have left scars, but the spirit of the people is strong. Community-led programs in local schools now prioritize Pitjanchachara and Yankunitjatjara languages, ensuring that children grow up fluent in both ancestral and national tongues. Art centers in nearby Mutitjulu and other outstations support Indigenous artists who carry storylines through painting, sculpture, and song. And then there is the governance. Since the handback of Uluru in 1985, the park has been co-managed by Parks Australia and the Uluru Kata Tjuta Board of Management, which is majority Indigenous. This means Aṉangu voices are not just consulted, they lead. Decisions about access, conservation, tourism, and sacred site protection are made collaboratively, with traditional owners holding veto power over key matters. One of the most visible impacts of this co-management was the closure of the Uluru climb in the year 2019. For years, Aṉangu had asked visitors not to climb the rock, explaining that the path led through sacred men's ceremonial sites and violated cultural protocol. But many tourists ignored the request. It was only after decades of advocacy, education, and cultural dialogue that the climb was permanently closed. The decision was not about control, it was about respect. In interviews, many Aṉangu described the moment as a relief. Not a victory, not a punishment, but a step toward balance. The land, they said, could breathe again. But being a guardian does not mean resisting all change. It means discerning what can adapt and what must be protected. Technology, for instance, is embraced in thoughtful ways. Drones are used for environmental monitoring. Apps help with language teaching. Film and media allow elders to record stories for future generations, ensuring they are never lost again. Tourism, too, is not seen as an enemy. When done respectfully, it is a bridge. Cultural tourism initiatives led by Aṉangu guides generate income, create employment, and foster understanding. Visitors who come with humility, who walk slowly, listen deeply, and ask sincere questions, are often transformed by the experience. They leave not just with photographs, but with reverence. Yet challenges remain. Climate change threatens the fragile desert ecology. Waterholes dry faster, bushfires rage more unpredictably, and with increased global attention on Uluru comes pressure from developers, media, and politics. Balancing sacred law with economic realities is a daily negotiation. But the Aṉangu are not alone. Allies, both indigenous and non-indigenous, work alongside them, guided by the principle that this is not just Aboriginal land, it is shared heritage. Uluru, in this way, becomes a symbol, not just of ancient culture, but of resilience, not just of struggle, but of partnership. Its guardians are not relics of the past. They are leaders of a living culture that is as relevant today as it has ever been. When the elders speak, they do not shout. Their voices are soft, deliberate, and full of weight. They speak of obligation, not rights, but responsibilities, to care for the land, to teach the young, to greet visitors with dignity, to protect the sacred, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is hard. At night, when the sky blooms with stars and the desert hushes, the silhouette of Uluru looms dark and steady. It does not need to speak to be understood. Its presence alone is enough. But those who know it best, who walk its base, who tend its stories, who sit quietly at its feet, they hear what others cannot. They hear the rock breathing. They hear the ancestors singing, and they answer. As we come to the close of our journey around Uluru, let us carry with us not only facts and stories, but a sense of reverence, a recognition that this land is alive, held not just by geology, but by people who love it as kin. In our farewell, we'll take a moment to thank you for walking this path with us, and to invite you to keep listening, keep learning, and keep honoring the guardians of this sacred place.
Thank you for walking with us through the red dust and songlines of the heart of Australia. Uluru is more than a rock. It is a living presence, a keeper of law, of memory, of spirit. And those who care for it, the Aṉangu people, do so not out of tradition alone, but out of love and deep responsibility. As the stories have shown us, every crevice holds meaning, every shadow whispers a lesson, and every sunrise brings a chance to remember what was nearly forgotten. If this journey has touched you, if it's helped you relax, reflect, or simply feel more connected to this ancient land, we gently ask you to support our work by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us share more voices, more stories, and more truth from the lands that still speak. Now, as the night deepens and your thoughts begin to drift, may you rest with the quiet strength of Uluru beside you and the songs of the ancestors softly guiding your dreams. Good night, friend, and thank you.